Welcome to MCN and the bike that many sports bike fans have been waiting for, the Yamaha R9. Now we're here at the Seville circuit in southern Spain. We're going to be riding it later on and I can't wait. In fact, I've been waiting 12 years for this to happen, ever since I first rode the MT-09 at its launch in Croatia back in 2013. I've always wanted Yamaha to make a sports bike version of the MT-09, and here it is. So you can check out a video that we did at the tail end of 2024 where Dan Sutherland went through this bike in fine detail, what makes this bike tick. So I won't bore you with all the facts and figures now, but perhaps you'd allow me to point out a few little points that have kind of piqued my interest, which I'm quite excited about. So this is more than just an MT-09 in a frock, although it has got an MT-09 engine. It makes the same 117 bhp, still a 3-cylinder, still an 890cc. Yamaha haven't done much to the engine, to be honest. They've tweaked the fueling and the mapping just to make it a little bit sharper. They've made the gearing longer, so it goes a little bit faster top speed. They reckon 15% faster top speed. But what they've really done is thrown a kitchen sink at the chassis. So this bike basically replaces the R6 and the R1. This is Yamaha's only fully road legal Supersport bike now, big capacity. And Yamaha have made this into a Supersport bike. There's no question that, you know, with clip-ons, you're quite over the front, but the riding position isn't as extreme as an R6. So the bars are slightly taller than an R6 is. They're nicely splayed out. And yeah, it's full-on Supersport, but it doesn't feel cramped at all. There's lots of room. I'm 6 foot tall, so yeah, there's lots of room to move around. And I mean, you know, whether it'd be nice on a 200-mile journey, I think you're still going to get wrist ache, but the tank is quite short, unlike the XSR 900 or a Speed Triple 1200 RR. When you've got long tanks and you're splayed over the front, it's quite uncomfortable. But this, you can do the old noughties and 90s, rest your elbow on the tank when you're going along to take the weight off your wrist, and it's got cruise control as well. So, you know, comfort-wise, it's pretty good, not too extreme, and it feels like there's going to be a lot of room to move around on the track as well. So the most kind of significant thing about this is it's got its own chassis. So the chassis is a lot stiffer. It's got fully adjustable suspension, so it's not built down to a price. It's got Brembo styling calipers, so the brakes should be good. It's even got braided steel lines. It's got loads and loads of electronics, the kind of electronics that we first saw on the R1 in 2015, lean sensitive, slide control, different levels of ABS. It comes with a quick shifter as standard. It's got cruise control. It's got a really nice coloured dash. And one of the things this coloured dash does is it would display dashboard messages like you get in MotoGP. So using the Yamaha app that links with this dash, you could stand here in the pit lane and you could send the dash a message, you know, go a bit faster than easy or whatever. So that's really, really cool. So, you know, this isn't a built down to a price motorcycle at all, although it only costs £12,250. You get a lot of bike for the money, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the styling is bang on. It's got wings. It's got these slotted top yokes that look like an M1 MotoGP bike. It's got the vents in the tail unit. This particular bike has got an Akrapovic can on it, which is one of the accessories. It doesn't come with that as standard. But it's a lovely, lovely thing. And you know what? I can't wait to get out there. So enough of me yapping. I'm going to get changed and get to ride the MT-09 in a frock, basically, which I've been waiting all this time to do.
Oh mate, how was that?
Really good. I didn't really know what to expect. Obviously this has got the heart of an MT-09, but the engine feels a lot livelier than the MT-09. Even though it's the same power, it's a lot more urgent, it's a lot crisper. It's still got the MT-09 character. It's quite easy to ride. It'll grunt off of corners in quite high gears. It does bump into its rev limiter quite easily. It runs out of rev soon. And the chassis feels like a Supersport chassis. It feels like an R6. It's agile, it's quite roomy, just really, really easy to ride. Lovely exhaust note. The brakes are pretty good, probably the best R brakes I've used. I mean, they're not absolutely, they don't hiss like a snake and just, you know, slam you into a brick wall when you're pulling on the lever.
Was the ABS intrusive, or was that?
The ABS, they've taken the ABS fuse out.
Oh, have they?
So no ABS intrusion. It's not an R6, but we weren't expecting an R6. It's not shrill like an R6. It doesn't hit hard like an R6. It's just much easier to ride. And I think, you know, lap times, as the World Supersport boys have proved, there's not a lot of difference between this and an R6 in race trim, probably a second in the favour of the R6. But yeah, just really easy to ride.
Nice, mate. Let's do some more laps.
Do some more laps. So at long last, we finally got to ride the new Yamaha R9. Was it worth the wait? Absolutely. This is a fantastic bike, and really of the time. Maybe this bike wouldn't have been kind of accepted in the Supersport heyday when it was all screaming 4-cylinder 600s, but by today's standards, kind of a more interesting, different kind of engine is very apt for a Supersport bike, a bike that's very easy to ride, is hopefully going to kind of maybe bring new riders into Supersport, or maybe bring older riders back into Supersport. I think it's a fantastic thing. So a bike like this with an MT-09 engine, which is kind of 117 bhp, probably at the back wheel that's going to be probably not even 110 bhp. Does it feel fast? Well, surprisingly, yes. Like I said at the beginning, after we first got off the track, it feels very crisp, very sporty, the engine, and it's amazing how much difference it feels in a different chassis, you know, compared to an XSR 900 GP or an MT-09. It does feel fast, but it doesn't smash you in the stomach like an R6. It's not brutal, it's not angry, it's not shouty. The way it goes about its speed and performance is much more subtle. The engine is fantastic. It pulls out of corners really well because it's got a lot of torque. It does bump into its rev limiter quite soon, so sometimes you're between gears around this racetrack, which isn't the end of the world. It's got the grunt to pull any gear really through the corners. And although the sound is quite muted through the standard exhaust pipe, it still sounds great, like a triple, you know, the rasping triple soundtrack is fantastic. This bike replaces the R6 and the R1, but really it's kind of the spiritual successor to the R6. Is it as much fun as the R6? I would say no. A screaming 600, there's nothing quite like it. Just the excitement, the way the noise drills into your brain is just incredible. You know, this is much more subtle. So in terms of actually coming in from the track and shaking with excitement, I think an R6 is still better, but this does come close. And like I say, the speed it produces is much more gentle, it's much more subtle. And in terms of pure lap times, there probably wouldn't be that much in it, but the R6 would have the edge. One of the advantages this bike would have over an R6 or a traditional Supersport bike is that it is easy to ride fast. You don't absolutely have to scream the life out of it to get to its performance. It's got a lot of mid-range. It does cut off at the top a little bit and bump into its rev limiter quite soon, but because it's got such a nice wide spread of power, because the power is so friendly, it is very easy to ride. In terms of handling, that is where this bike gets really, really close to a traditional Supersport bike. The way the riding position is laid out feels very familiar if you've grown up with noughties, Supersport bikes. It feels like an R6 in the corners. It's very agile, it's very predictable. You know exactly what you're going to get with it if you're used to riding Supersport bikes. Easy to change direction. The brakes, we'll come on to the brakes in a minute, but they're good as well. We were riding on RS11 Bridgestone tyres today, which are the standard tyres. Loads and loads of grip, loads of feel through the chassis really. And the harder you push this bike, like with its new chassis, which is stiffer, the nicer it feels. The suspension is controlled, it's plush, absolutely no complaints when it comes to handling. Yamaha have made this bike slightly kinder when it comes to its riding position. So it's still very much a Supersport bike, but in the modern way now, the bars are a little bit more splayed. They're a little bit higher as well. The riding position for me is a bit cramped because these have got adjustable foot pegs on, even standard, and they go up and down by 15 mil. Now, to give it the best kind of ground clearance around the track, Yamaha have set the pegs very high, and we didn't get a chance to drop them. So for a 6-foot me with dodgy knees, the pegs were too high. And I think if we had have got to drop them, it would have been much more comfortable. But in terms of moving around the bike, getting tucked under the fairing, it's very, very natural. It's a really great riding position for the track. One of the things coming into this test was wondering about these brakes. Now, these have got Brembo stylomers, you've got braided steel lines, Brembo master cylinder, all the ingredients to make fantastic brakes, and we've tried these on European bikes and they're absolutely amazing. Yamaha in the past have had a habit of diluting the braking feel and power of their R bikes, or every bike actually, as well as the sort of R Supersport bikes. Now the brakes are very, very good on this. There's no ABS intervention, but that's because they remove the ABS. So time will tell when we get to ride this bike on the roads whether there is ABS intervention. I would say that the feel and the sort of the tactile feel of the brakes isn't as good as you'd expect from Brembo stylomers. There's still that kind of tiny bit of stodge in the system because there's still no direct connection between the lever and the caliper. It's got to go through an ABS pump, albeit the ABS isn't intruding. So they're not as crisp as they could be, but there was never any problem with braking all the way through our day. Very, very consistent and no fade. The launch of the R9 was supposed to be at Jerez, and unfortunately the day we arrived it absolutely bucketed down, flooded the track, loads of dirt was on the track and we couldn't basically use the circuit. So lastminute.com, Yamaha managed to get to this Seville circuit and to let us ride the bikes. So they had no setup time. The bikes were supposed to be on slicks, so basically these bikes are basically as they come out the showroom with very little setup. But here, this track in Seville is where we did the Panigale V2 launch not so long ago. And the Panigale and the R9 really are going to go head to head. Very similar power, very similar weight. They're both kind of new generation Supersport bikes, so it's quite easy to make the comparison. So if those two bikes were sat in pit lane now and I could choose one to ride for the rest of the day, I probably would go on the Ducati. The Ducati is far racier feeling, but it would be because it was on slicks, it was on Olin suspension, it had setup, it was a lovely day, whereas now we've kind of got drizzle and it's quite cold. So the Ducati had a lot in its favour, whereas the Yamaha hasn't. I think if I was wanting to set a lap time, I'd go on a Ducati. The Ducati are very serious, like Ducatis always are. Very, very, very capable. But I think in terms of actual fun and enjoyment, I'd have more of a laugh on the Yamaha. And I think if you put slicks on the Yamaha, if you spent days setting up the suspension, and if it was a nicer day, I think the actual lap times would be very, very close. The Yamaha just feels a little bit more playful and the Ducati much more serious. And the Ducati in the spec we rode it is nearly £5,000 more. And that really is a big consideration. To find out exactly how the Ducati and the Yamaha compare, we're going to be riding them head to head very soon on the road and on the track. So watch out for that video. Even though the Yamaha is a lot cheaper than the Ducati, it's still really, really well built. The attention to detail from the wings and the sculpted bodywork, the top yoke, the switch gear, the dash, everything is fantastic quality. It's really well built out the crate, and it's not just nice as new. When you look through MCN owners reviews of the R7, it's kind of got an unprecedented 5 out of 5 score for reliability. So they're absolutely bomb-proof. You look at owners reviews for the MT09, so the engine's obviously the same, no problems at all with the engine. So, you know, when you part with your £12,250 you're going to get an exciting bike, and you're going to get a bike that's built to last as well. So that actually makes the R9 really good value. Now, not necessarily cheap, over £12,000, still expensive in anybody's money, but you know, compared to the Ducati, it is very good value, and you're getting a lot of Supersport fun and technology for your money. One thing about the R9 is there are a lot of official accessories available, touring accessories, cosmetic accessories, performance accessories, but also the fully blown GYTR accessories. So Yamaha will sell you everything to make your R1 into the ultimate track day bike, the ultimate race bike, and this is basically an example of the kitchen sink that you can throw at this bike. So, you know, everything from carbon fibre clocks around, you've got different top yokes, different handlebars, Öhlins cartridge kit in the forks, Öhlins rear shock, bodywork, full system, engine protection, and everything in between. And this thing is amazing. I mean, this is why this latest generation Supersport bikes are a little different to how they used to be back in the day. If you wanted to create a bike like this, you'd have to go to any number of different specialists to get it jazzed up like this. I can even see a quick action throttle there. This is a work of art, and all available at your local Yamaha dealer. The big question is should you buy one? Well, there's no reason why you shouldn't. If you want kind of Supersport thrills, if you want all the latest technology, if you want a Supersport bike that's easy to ride, that isn't too uncomfortable, but still a little bit focused, then, you know, the R9 is fantastic, and it's been well worth the wait. It may drag people back from their adventure bikes and their retro bikes to go back on a sports bike again. Hopefully it will bring newer riders in from their A2 licensed bikes, from their R7s, and I think really, although Yamaha have spent a lot of time making us wait for the R9, it has been more than worth it, and it's a fantastic bike, and I've had a great day riding it. And that's it for this test. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more like this coming very soon.